This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you a quick overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. In this week's Midweek Report, we'll be looking at the Boise Hangar collapse, specifically the OSHA report that's come out about that, because I know I ripped the headlines when it happened. We'll also be doing an overview of the different wildfires that are happening in the state here, because it is fire season. Also, a high-speed chase happened on I-84 this last week, so we'll be covering that. How pro-Palestine protesters have got a little bit of a legal win on the state, and how the Emmett School system is considering a smartphone ban, that and much more as we go through the Midweek Report. Jumping straight into it, we have the Boise Hangar collapse and the report that OSHA has given of that. As you well know, the OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They have released a report on the January collapse that happened to the Boise Hangar there at the airport. Crazy to me that it was January. It feels like it was just yesterday. Which, in it, for those that didn't hear that initial story, that killed 3 and injured 8. That's a final tally there. The main details of the report is that OSHA cited Big D builders for 3 serious safety violations, proposing a $198,586 penalties. Not small change there. The report states that Big D ignored visible warning signs and safety protocols during construction, including insufficient bracing and loosening connecting bolts is their main gripe there. OSHA Area Director David Keenerns, hopefully I got your last name right, condemned the company's blatant disregard for safety regulation is how he put it there. Also, Inland Crane of Boise is also facing a $10,163 fine, so not quite as Big D building, for 1 safety violation. Both companies currently are contesting the citation because they do have that ability to appeal, and so we'll see where that progresses. But in either way, the collapse was a big tragedy and is also sparking a wrongful death suit by the people involved from the families that died. With all this going on, there are also still plans for the hangar to be rebuilt using the existing building permit, argument being that it wasn't the fault of the permit, it was the fault of the builders that were hired. So they're still moving forward with that, while in the background there's stuff going on with the wrongful death suit for this. And speaking of kind of destructive things, Idaho wildfires, we have a large swath of stuff to talk about because it's Idaho wildfire season. As we're recording this, I know there's a couple that I won't have in this script over near the Owyhees and a couple that have started down here in the Treasure Valley, but these are the really big ones I saw researching up to the Midweek Report. Currently, there are about 3. Here are the big 3. The first one, which we've heard about, is the Bench Lake Fire near Stanley. Good news, it is 85% contained, but it's burned about 2,595 acres. Not so great. Crews are currently focusing on mop-up operations to fix it there, and they're gradually reopening the Redfish Lake area, so if you're planning on trying to do some camping or stuff out there, it should be opened here fairly shortly so you can get back to that area if you like. But taking a negative turn, the second one, which is the Gwen Fire near Lewiston, has burned over about 28,000 acres, much larger, and destroyed several structures. It has prompted a level 3 evacuation in some areas. As of the writing the script, that was that, but go check for yourself if those evacuations are still in order. It's very close over there by Julietta. Firefighters are utilizing air and ground resources to combat the flames for that one, so keep them in your prayers, and the people over there in Julietta and Lewiston. And then the third one, which technically isn't in Idaho, but it has affected us a lot, is over in eastern Idaho. It's the Durkee Fire. It's burned nearly 294,000 acres, so almost 300,000 acres. It is now, thankfully, 63% contained. Originally, it was 0% contained, allowing for more evacuations to be lifted. Now that it's contained and they know where it's going, they don't have to worry about it as much of what's going on. Across the board, fire crews are working tirelessly with containment lines for different fires, if not ones that we've talked about here. Hotspot management, if there's lightning strikes or different things, maybe cigarette butt stuff to try to put those out before they get larger. And just overall trying to protect communities. Officials still, though, even though a lot of these have gotten more contained and under control, are urging the public to be cautious and vigilant and not to do stupid stuff like going out and shooting in areas that there's a lot of burning fuel or smoking and stuff, because that fire danger still really exists because we haven't had a good rain, and it's just been continuing to be so hot here in the Pacific Northwest. And speaking of a hot story, forgive me for my bad transitions, but I'm trying. Practice makes perfect. There was a rather dramatic incident that unfolded here in the Treasure Valley on August 1st, ending with officers involved in a shooting on I-84 near Meridian. As for the timeline of events and how it all played out, it started with a fight in Meridian around 6 p.m., which led a police chase spanning multiple cities. The suspect was an adult male. He fled from Meridian to Kootenai and then back towards Meridian, so a ping-ponging game there. And he claimed that he had a gun during the pursuit and stuff. I'm guessing that means that he was on the radio or phone or something communicating with the officers, or they were trying to get a hold of him. As for what the police did to eventually stop this rampage, the Kootenai police stopped him using a pit maneuver on Meridian Road, but after stopping him, the suspect exited his vehicle with a gun, when then 3 Kootenai police deputies fired their weapons at him. But the end outcome of that, just overall, is that the suspect was critically injured and got rushed to the hospital there, because when you get shot, it's a little critical there. But thankfully, because of that, no officers were hurt. As for the traffic impact, you may have, if you were on the freeway on August 1st, seen how it caused some significant disruptions. It closed westbound I-84 on-ramp at the Meridian Road. But moving forward, the Boise police are leading the investigation, which is involving a complex multi-agency pursuit. Still more stuff to be done there, and the Boise Police Department is going to head that up there. And speaking of things that can be a little controversial, Idaho State has encountered a little bit of a legal obstacle in its efforts to manage the pro-Palestinian demonstrations near the state capitol in Boise. A judge has issued an injunction favoring the protesters, known as the People's Liberated University, preventing the state from seizing tents or removing any of the tents from the area there. Preventing the state from removing tents or seizing any of the property that they have while they're protesting there. The ruling comes as a setback for the Idaho Department of Administrations, which has argued that the demonstrators are violating camping and public land laws by staying, that they're not arguing that protesting is bad per se, but they're staying there on public property, and that's not good, that they're damaging grass and obstructing access with the state. With that said, the state's concerns were addressed and acknowledged by the court, with the injunction allowing for the protesters to continue as long as they don't impede those functions. So as long as they're not damaging the grass and as long as they're not preventing people or being an obstruction for people to get into the building. The Department of Administrations is citing ongoing litigation and has declined to comment on this development because of that ongoing litigation and stuff that's happening. That's all the details there. It marks a little bit of a victory for the protesters there in this ongoing legal battle, which kind of is circling around with the state arguing on First Amendment rights, that yes, you have the right to protest, but you don't have the right to be permanently there or something, or make an encampment of some kind. So it'll be interesting to see as the state continues on this battle what will happen. Speaking of a little bit of a different type of battle, one that I know parents have had for a long time with their kids about screen use, the Emmett School District is contemplating a ban on cell phones in classrooms with the goal of enhancing student learning. Superintendent Craig Woods is exploring various enforcement methods for it, emphasizing the need to reduce distractions and maximizing educational time. It's so amazing if you spend a little bit of time on your smartphone, how much it'll take away. Just 1 minute there, before you know it, you've spent hours of your day on your phone. The reaction from this proposal has been a bit mixed in the feedback, according to the district, but many parents have shown support for the potential ban. The proposal comes alongside other end changes, so it's in there with some other stuff, including a 4-day school week and a new bus system. Mr. Woods assured that emergency communications, however, would still be possible through classroom phones. So if there was some emergency or something, communication still can be had. It's just not left in the hands of the students. The district is being very careful to consider what the policy could do and how it would work best for Emmett there, with obviously the overall primary focus being for it to improve learning and the overall environment there, which is the goal and function of an educational institution. With that said, there's not a final decision that's been made on it, but students should be prepared for maybe possible potential changes as the new school year is less than a couple weeks away as we're going into it. There isn't any final decision that's been made on this, but if you're a student over there in Emmett or a parent, you should be prepared for those potential changes. As the new school year approaches, it's less than 2 weeks away at this point of recording, if I remember correctly. Which, if you've loved the stories that you've heard and the Midweek Report thus far, do us a favor and hit the like button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us reach more folks who love Idaho just like you. I know this is a little bit of a political thing, and if you're a person that's not, then please bear with me. The Idaho Freedom Foundation has announced some updates to its Freedom and Spending Index for the 2025 legislative session. And for those that aren't familiar with the indexes, the goal of them is they rate lawmakers based on their voting records, which IFF rates bills, and then those ratings of the bills trickle down into how lawmakers vote on those. The particular updates they're doing to the Freedom Index is adding new measures for legislation that's protecting family values values and Western culture. And it will also incorporate educational freedom tracking. So they have the education index over there, the education freedom index, and they're just incorporating that into the freedom index. The family values and Western culture, they have some added tenets there that they're going to try to weigh bills on that in conjunction with the other values or metrics that they have on the freedom index. And then on the spending index, they've adjusted the valuation of enhanced budgets, emphasizing on reducing government spending, which is something that's always been there, but adjusting it based on the enhanced budget things because the budget system in the legislature's changed a little bit there. President Ron Nate stated that the changes are necessary to addressing evolving social issues and will provide a more comprehensive assessment of legislative performance. So that's the end goal that they're going with there. As for what this all means, it shows that there's a little bit of a shift. These different adaptations are aiming to keep the scorecard more relevant with what the people of Idaho like and the values that Idaho is trying to push forward in the legislature. And speaking of one of IFF's favorite things, money, at the national level, Representative Russ Fulcher is proposing to remove taxes from overtime pay. U.S. Congressman Russ Fulcher has introduced a new bill called the Keep Every Extra Penny, or KEEP Act. Congress, they love to come up with great acronyms. The purpose of the bill is aimed at eliminating income tax on overtime pay. For a little bit of context for the bill, it responds to the ongoing kind of labor shortage and the persistent inflation, which some party may have started, that has been above the Federal Reserve's target for 39 consecutive months. As for the specifics of how the KEEP Act bill will work there, it targets income tax and not payroll tax. This way it ensures funding remains intact for some of those more middle-of-the-lane policies that some more squished Republicans like Social Security, Medicaid, and unemployment. Russ Fulcher's argument on this is that it will provide financial relief for hardworking Americans, safeguarding essential government programs, and cover workers' current eligibility for overtime under the Fair Labor Standard Acts. It hopefully won't get hit or beat up in court and stuff. His perspective on it is that the reason he brought this legislation is he sees it as a modern solution to economic challenges and draws some parallels to the relief that was provided in overtime laws during the Great Depression, and that argues that since the economy's down, we should look to the past and learn from the principles of the past and apply them to the present here. Also, speaking of money and coming back again locally, Nampa's 2025 budget has been released with tax hikes and some focus on transit debates there. Recently, the Nampa City Council tackled its 2025 budget, which that's been something that the rest of the state's been going through, facing some tough decisions on taxing and spending. The City Council started on it here recently and faced some tough decisions, but the overall budget is set to decrease actually by $7.1 million. But the city is still grappling with some rising costs, mainly in the area that they approved a 4% wage increase for city employees to stay competitive and to retain staff. And then also the funding of the Valley Regional Transit, where they approved $471,000, which is a decline of about $233,000, which may impact busing services over there in Nampa. Granted, I don't know how many there are. They also voted to use foregone tax dollars for sewer infrastructure expansion, despite some opposition on that one. The goal of that is to prevent losing potential taxes that would have gone to Meridian. As for the mayor's perspective on that, Mayor Debbie Kling emphasized the city's transition from rural to urban and a growing need for public transit, so a little bit of opposition that, hey, we need to fund it, but don't defund it. As for some details, the overall decrease of $7.1 million is largely due to paid off bonds. So look, the city's actually paying off stuff, so we have less money we're spending there. The levy rate is expected with that to drop from 0.0029 to 0.0027. Want to get those zeros in there because it's a small percentage. But moving forward, there's a public hearing on the budget scheduled for August 19th. So if you want your voices to be heard, if you want the budget to be larger, if you want it to be smaller, whatever other detail, you should go and get your voices heard because it actually does have an effect. And particularly with this next story, it really shows how they do, which with Ada County rejecting a controversial solar farm proposal, which before we get into how the people's involvement did that, the project would have spanned about 2,385 acres between Ada and Canyon counties, so a little bit of a bridge between the two counties. The main reason the decision got shot down is a lot of people from the local community came and showed opposition and showed some pretty extensive environmental concerns about the project. As for the specific details about it and getting into those a little bit more nitty-gritty, the renewable energy company Savion, I think that's how you say it, Savion, a subsidiary of Shell, had planned to install about about 230,000 solar panels on the agricultural land south of Kootenai there, but the commission cited the potential impact on the area's farming character, which is what I think a lot of people that were there were arguing for, and concerns about noxious weed contamination affecting Idaho's seed industry, and the possible effects on the local birds of prey, which is pretty nearby to where they wanted to put this in. However, the council did try to save a little bit of face here, citing that there is a need for solar developments, emphasizing that this wasn't an anti-solar decision or something, pointing out that they previously approved another Savion project south of the Boise airport. So like saying, look, we approved one. Don't get mad at us, all environmentalists in Boise. We did approve a solar farm. This isn't an anti-solar thing. But that kind of brings me to the whole point of this. The unprecedented community turnout against the project had a significant influence on the decision. I would say it would have the biggest influence, that it was the main thing that caused it. Now, as for the final fate of the whole project, you'd think it'd be currently dead, but it was so big, a second portion of it extends over into Canyon County, so there's waiting for a decision there. The main reason waiting with that one is pending a formal submission of Ada County's decision. They've given that decision, but welcome to government moving slow. It has to be formally done and audited and all the things. So it'll be interesting to see how Canyon County responds and how the public on the Canyon County side will. Which, if you're over in Canyon County and you don't want a solar thing, or you do want a solar thing, please don't hesitate to share this episode so people can hear about what's going on with local events, or just across the state to have a broader understanding about the state that we all love. And then coming back to Boise, we have the Boise State lawsuit with Big City Coffee. Got a little bit of an update on this. This legal battle has been going on for a bit, but it's in its final stages now. Judge Cynthia Yee Wallace recently issued rulings that have narrowed the scope of the lawsuit, particularly that while BSU and the president, Mayoral, have been removed from the case, the suit is still against the top 3 administrators as it's moving forward. Now, the remaining issue to be determined will be at the August 28th trial, is that whether Vice President Alicia Etsy and Lisa Webb retaliated against Big City Coffee owner Sarah Jo Fidley for expressing her First Amendment rights. The case stems from the closure of Big City Coffee's campus location in 2020 during all the shutdowns and COVID, and also that students protesting over the shop's support of law enforcement and other stuff. So a bunch of conservative stuff that campuses don't like. Fidley originally sought $10 million in damages, alleging violations of her constitutional rights. Moving forward with the trial date approaching, Judge Yee Wallace has ordered mediation for the August 23 deadline, with both parties going into expressing their confidence on their position as they prepare for their day in court, which will be very interesting to see if the college can win out. Specifically, when an interesting side element to add to this, it's using taxpayer money to fight this court case. So there's other legislation that's on the horizon there, hint, hint. And also, speaking of city council things, maybe I should have switched this up so they matched correctly. A resident has withdrawn his proposal for a Spirit Lake project that got a little bit more pushback than he expected, which was the removal of a sandbar at the Spirit Lakes Berkeley Creek. Has been halted by some pretty strong community opposition. We talked about it on the last Midweek Report. Property owner Stephen Ford rescinded his application after a public hearing revealed a overwhelming disapproval for it. The project was aimed at improving dock access in the area. It faced criticism for potential environmental impacts and public access concerns. Residents emphasized the importance of preserving the Spirit Lakes' unique clay seal bottom. I didn't know about this, which is the only one of 2 such lakes in the world, so there's only 2 others like it. And also the Idaho Department of Lands had put in here as well, recommending against the project, citing concerns about necessity, efficiency, and the risk to water quality, because environmental things. Ford, surprised by the opposition, withdrew his application, stating he was offended about rumors that were being given around about his intentions, making the argument that, hey, I just wanted to make an improvement, and so I applied it. I didn't expect this to be a big hoorah. But moving forward, many longtime residents of Spirit Lake have saw this as a victory for preserving the lake's natural features and public enjoyment. But on the flip side, some have seen this as an overreach by environmentalists in an area where it's maybe not warranted and an overreaction. And speaking of another kind of controversial thing happening up north and keeps getting batted back and round, the Kootenai County Fairgrounds future, the commissioners weighed in on that. We've been reporting on that for a little bit here. as the county commissioners have been getting into that debate. The main debate that kind of came up recently at City Hall is that Commissioner Bill Brooks voiced support for a 25 to 50-year lease, citing strong community back, supporting for it, saying, hey, the community is in support of this. Let's do it for this time. Let's keep it here. Let's stay with tradition. However, a couple other commissioners disagreed. Bruce Marti and Lisa Duncan favored a more flexible approach. Specifically, Bruce Mateer and Lisa Duncan favored a more flexible approach. Mateer suggested a 15 to 25-year commitment, expressing concerns about potential future county expansion needs, so not wanting to constrain as much. Duncan is considering a non-binding moratorium of understanding rather than a full-on lease agreement. As for a little background, if you haven't been following this story, the discussion follows the fair's leadership unveiling a $28 million expansion plan, which hinges on securing a long-term lease. So if they don't get a lease, they can't move forward with the expansion plan. The commissioners have also addressed the challenges of long-term county planning in this, acknowledging that the impact of frequent leadership changes can cause some different issues with implementing a kind of a vision there, which is basically a lot of gobbledygook of basically, yeah, if we don't commit, then we can't have a consistent plan, which you shouldn't invest in, because right now the current administration's like, yeah, we want to do that, but it would hate to invest that money and then all that other stuff. So kind of investment that we should make a legal commitment and sign and put our money where our mouth is. But moving forward, it does show that there is a complex balance going on between the growth, but also preserving the fairgrounds, but also being prepared for future growth. It'll be interesting to see what heads decide on that. If you're up there in Kootenai County, you may want to go to these meetings. You might be able to give some advice or give stuff, because at the end of the day, a lot of these people are elected. Sometimes they are swamp creatures, but other times they're not, and your input really helps them a ton. Speaking of which, if you don't want to miss any of our future stories on the Kootenai County Fairgrounds or any of the other topics we've talked about or new ones that come on the scene, make sure to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss any of that. And speaking of things up in Kootenai County and going from the city council to the mayoral, as you probably have known listening to this program, or if you're up there, Coeur d'Alene is transitioning from two different mayors, and they've decided a new one here. The Coeur d'Alene City Council has unanimously selected Councilmember Wood McEvers to serve as the new mayor following Jim Hammond's resignation. As for that overall kind of process and how it works, McEvers was nominated for his seniority and approachability and will take office on September 1st, completing Hammond's term. The decision comes after Hammond announced his resignation to relocate to Colorado. Effective August 31st, this transition involves where McEvers was originally on the city council, and so they voted to fill his seat there, so they don't have an issue there. But coming into conclusion, what this means for you guys up there in Coeur d'Alene, the next public mayoral election in Coeur d'Alene is scheduled for November of 2025, giving McEvers over a year to lead the city and to see how voters like him, and probably give him a chance if he wants to significantly shift stuff or make an argument for his full-on election later on. And speaking of Idaho's natural beauty, which we just can't get away from, and possibly if you're planning something for 2025, this will be important. Starting August 1st of this year, the Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation will halt reservations for the following year as this transitions to a more user-friendly platform. The reasons for this is the new system is in development with partnership with the Branded Information Systems. The launch for that is expected by January 6th of 2025, but if you already had some reservations and stuff for things next year, they are saying that those are going to be automatically transferred over and you don't have to worry about that. Granted, it's government, so you might need to talk to them and double check there. Seth Hobbs, the department's reservation program manager, has assured that it's just a temporary inconvenience, which will hopefully result in easier navigation, better tools, and new functionality for park visitors and different things if you're coming. Moving forward, during the pause, reservations for 2024 will still remain open, so if there's still some slots or stuff for this year, that system will still be up and running. The upgrade aims to streamline the booking process and provide more information stuff about park facilities and events. Basically, overall, they're trying to make an improvement, and in that there's a little bit of downtime for future stuff, so it gets ported and they need to put a pause on it there. Which that brings us to the end of the report here, which I am so sorry to leave you, but I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our Sunday show. The last couple we'll be doing here, where John and I talk about the main stories going on in Idaho and dive into them. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us at lyimedia@protonmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting us at local Yocal Idaho. We're a small team, so we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting stories. Thank you for your support. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.